I will never forget that moment. When Marcus appeared in that burning doorframe, I thought my hero had finally arrived. In the smoke-filled conference room on the 20th floor, Victoria and I had been trapped in this godforsaken place for almost 20 minutes. The fire alarm had gone off, but strangely, the alarm system on our floor seemed to be broken. It wasn't until smoke began seeping through the door cracks that I realized the building was on fire. Victoria sat in the corner crying like a child. Her mascara was completely smeared, and she kept muttering, I'm sorry under her breath. I tried to stay calm, covering my nose and mouth with wet tissues while searching for any possible escape route. The emergency stairwell was blocked. The main elevator was out of service. We were completely trapped. Then Marcus appeared. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest in that moment. He would save us. He would get us out of this hell. But what happened next completely changed everything I thought I knew about this man, about our 3-year relationship, about myself. When Marcus burst in, the smoke nearly obscured his face. He was coughing, his eyes bloodshot. But when he saw the two of us, I saw something in his eyes I'll never forget. Panic. Not because of the fire, not because of a danger, but because of choice that he had to choose between Victoria and me, a choice to save only one person. I looked at him and said in the calmest voice I could manage, Marcus, can you get both of us out at the same time? He shook his head, his voice trembling. The smoke in the stairwell is too thick. I can only take one person down first, then come back. The silence in that moment was more suffocating than the roar of flames. I looked at Victoria, who was gazing at Marcus with that desperate, expectant look. I knew that look too well. She'd looked at him the same way back at Stanford. Then Marcus made his choice. He walked toward Victoria, crouched down, and gently lifted her into his arms. Sophia, he turned to me, guilt in his eyes, but something else too, something like relief. You're stronger than her. You've always been stronger. You can hold on, and I'll be right back. I nodded, and I even smiled a little, because in that instant, I suddenly understood everything. He would never come back. Not because he couldn't, but because in his heart, I would always be the stronger one. The one who could be left behind, the one who should face difficulties alone. I watched him carry Victoria away into the smoke, listening to her cries growing fainter in his arms. I didn't cry, I didn't despair. I just sat there, holding a wet cloth over my nose and mouth, waiting for the rescue I knew would never come. 20 minutes later, the real hero appeared. Fire Captain Jake Rodriguez kicked down the door. Behind his mask, I saw the eyes a true hero should have. Ma'am, we're here to save you. When I was carried downstairs, I saw Marcus standing beside the ambulance. He saw me and started to walk over, but his steps hesitated. Because Victoria was clutching his arm tightly, like a drowning person grasping a lifeline. Did I end the ambulance? The nurse asked me, Where's your boyfriend? Why isn't he with you? I looked out the window at Marcus and Victoria's figures and said quietly, He's not my boyfriend anymore. Looking back now, I should have seen Marcus's true nature long ago. Stanford campus. 2015, I was still that girl who sat in library corners because of social anxiety. The shadow of my mother's death in a car accident when I was 8 had followed me like a ghost. I was afraid to form deep connections with people because loss was too painful, but Marcus's appearance made me think I could finally open my heart. That day I was struggling with a business case analysis. The data just wouldn't add up. Marcus came over and asked softly, Need help? His voice was gentle, his eyes sincere. I learned later that he knew I was Sophia Chen, daughter of Chen Tech founder David Chen. But at the time, I truly believed it was fate, a poor student from a single-parent family at Stanford on scholarship, a rich girl, but lonely inside like an orphan. We spent 3 hours organizing that data. When the final formula worked out, we both sighed in relief. You're smart, he said. Why do you always sit here alone? I didn't answer, but I blushed. From that day on, Marcus began approaching me proactively. He would save me seats in the library, buy me apple pie I loved in the cafeteria, take walks with me when my social anxiety flared up. I felt I had finally met someone who understood me. On Valentine's Day 2016, he gave me a copy of Jane Eyre with an inscription on the title page. To my Jane, you are not alone anymore. I cried. For the first time in 20 years, I cried from happiness. We officially started dating. Marcus's mother suffered from chronic kidney disease and needed regular dialysis. The enormous medical costs put additional strain on an already struggling family. I told my father about this. David Chen was a kind man, Knowing Marcus's importance to me, he didn't hesitate to cover all the expenses. As long as my daughter is happy, he said, money isn't a problem. At the time, I thought Marcus loved me just as I loved him, pure, sincere, without any ulterior motives, until Victoria appeared. Fall 2017. Victoria Sterling from the drama department became the campus sensation. Beautiful, confident, flamboyant. She was my complete opposite. The first time I saw her was at the school's fundraising gala. She wore a red dress, reciting Shakespeare's sonnets on stage. Everyone in the audience was captivated by her, including Marcus. I saw how he looked at her, that focus and longing I'd never seen in his eyes before. She's really talented, he said to me. I nodded, but my heart was already uneasy. Over the next few months, Victoria began appearing frequently in our lives. She would join our study groups uninvited, coincidentally run into us at coffee shops, and comment on every single one of Marcus's social media posts. She was clever, never directly challenging my position, but infiltrating our relationship in seemingly harmless ways. Sophia is so lucky, she would often say, to have such a wonderful boyfriend. But when she said this, she was always looking at Marcus, her eyes carrying some kind of suggestion. I began to become sensitive and suspicious. I knew this wasn't right. I knew it was my insecurity acting up, but I couldn't control myself. Spring 2018, I found Marcus and Victoria studying alone in the library. They sat very close together, Marcus explaining a complex economics concept to her. It was the same concept he'd explained to me on our first date. In that moment, I understood. Marcus needed to feel needed. He needed to be someone's savior, to prove his worth by helping others, and Victoria needed him more than I did, or at least, she acted like she needed him more. Although Marcus often helped me, I rarely showed real dependence or vulnerability. I always quickly resumed my strong exterior, making Marcus feel his help wasn't essential. But Victoria was different. She would appear fragile in front of Marcus, seeking his protection and advice, making him feel important. Watching them, my heart suddenly felt very calm. I knew I had already lost him. Not because he didn't love me, but because he needed a woman who needed him more. April 2018. Marcus initiated our breakup. He said he needed time to think about what he wanted. But we both knew what, or rather, whom, he wanted. This isn't your fault, Sophia. He held my hand, guilt filling his eyes. You're too perfect, too independent. Being with you, I always feel so small. I nodded and even comforted him. I understand, Marcus. Everyone has the right to choose the lifestyle that makes them happy, but I didn't tell him that I cried all night. Not because I lost him, but because I realized that in his eyes, my strength had somehow become a flaw. 2 weeks later, Marcus and Victoria officially got together. Everyone on campus was talking about it. Some people sympathized with me, some thought Marcus was a jerk, but more people thought it was normal. Victoria is more feminine, I heard someone comment. Sophia is too strong. Men don't like that type. I began to reflect on myself. Was there really something wrong with me? Should I be more dependent, more fragile, more in need of protection? But whenever I thought about changing myself, a voice inside rebelled. It was my mother's voice. And our last conversation before she died, she told 8-year-old me, Sophia, remember, your worth doesn't need to be defined by others. You must become an independent woman. Don't depend on anyone. I chose to stay true to myself, even if it meant loneliness. On graduation day, I saw Marcus and Victoria standing together. Victoria wore a white dress, looking like a bride about to enter marriage. Marcus had his arm around her waist, smiling happily. I walked over to congratulate them. Congratulations, I said. I hope you'll always be happy. Victoria linked arms with Marcus, a flash of triumph in her eyes, but she remained polite on the surface. Thank you, Sophia. You'll find your own happiness too. Marcus looked at me with complex emotions in his eyes. Sophia, I shook my head, stopping whatever he wanted to say. You don't need to explain anything, Marcus. We're all pursuing our own happiness. There's nothing wrong with that. As I turned to leave, I heard Victoria whisper to Marcus behind me, She's really elegant. I admire her. But I knew that when she said this, her eyes must have held a victor's smile. After graduation, I stayed in Silicon Valley and entered my father's company. Marcus and Victoria moved to Los Angeles. She was pursuing her acting dreams, and he was supporting her career. I thought I would never see them again, and I thought the story was over. But I was wrong. Some people are destined to reappear in your life repeatedly until they teach you some important lessons. From 2019 to 2022, I threw all my energy into work. I excelled at Shintech, rising from an ordinary employee to department head. Father was proud of me, but he worried about my personal life. Sophia, work isn't everything in life, he said. You need to find a man who loves you. I don't need a man to complete my life. I replied, I'm fine. But alone in the deep of night, I still thought about Marcus. Not about getting back together, but wondering if things would have been different if I had been weaker, more needy. Spring 2022, Alex Blackwood entered my life. He was a Wall Street investment banker, commissioned to evaluate Shintech's acquisition value. From our first meeting, he left a deep impression on me. Not because of his looks, though he was indeed handsome, but because of how he looked at me. There was no pity in those eyes, no protective instinct, only equality and respect. Miss Chun, he said, I understand you're in charge of this project. I look forward to working with you. He didn't treat me specially because I was the boss's daughter, nor did he underestimate me because I was a woman. We communicated like two equal business partners, discussing data, analyzing markets, formulating strategies. This feeling was very comfortable. Alex Blackwood wasn't the kind of man I expected to appear in my life. March 2022. When he first walked into Shintech's conference room, I was preparing a report on the company's 5-year development plan. He wore a perfectly tailored dark blue suit, carried a black briefcase, and exuded the calm confidence characteristic of Wall Street elites. But what attracted me wasn't these external things. It was how he looked at me. There was none of Marcus's condescending desire to protect the weak, nor the flattery or calculation I'd seen in other men's eyes when facing a rich girl. When he looked at me, it was like looking at a worthy opponent to MS. Chun, he said, I'm Alexander Blackwood from Goldman Sachs. I understand you're handling this valuation project? I nodded. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, I have all the materials ready. For the next 3 hours, we were completely absorbed in business discussion. His questions were sharp and professional, my answers detailed and accurate. We were like two chess players, competing on the business chessboard. After the meeting, as he packed his documents, he said, Miss Chun, your analysis was brilliant. I rarely encounter partners with such clear thinking. Thank you, I said. Your questions were quite challenging too. He smiled. The first time I'd seen him smile. So, are you free for dinner tonight? I'd like to continue discussing this project. I hesitated for a moment, not because I was unwilling, but because I needed to confirm this was purely a business invitation. That, of course, but I think we should maintain a professional relationship. Of course, he said, though something flickered in his eyes. Completely professional. Dinner was at an upscale steakhouse downtown. Alex ordered a bottle of wine, and we continued discussing Shintech's market prospects. But with the influence of alcohol, the conversation began straying from work. Why did you choose to stay in the family business? He asked. With your abilities, you could succeed anywhere. This question touched something deep inside me. Because this is my roots. I said, My father built this company. I want to continue his legacy. But have you ever thought that maybe your future shouldn't be bound by the past? I looked at him, suddenly realizing the implication behind his question. Are you talking about me? Or about yourself? He paused, then laughed self-deprecatingly. You saw right through me. My family has its own traditions and expectations too, but sometimes I feel those aren't what I really want. In that moment, I saw something familiar in his eyes. Not vulnerability, but authenticity. Over the next few months, Alex frequently came to Silicon Valley, ostensibly for work, but I knew he had other purposes. He began inviting me to various events, dinners at fine restaurants, Broadway musical premieres, art exhibition openings. Every invitation was thoughtful, every date perfect, but it was precisely this perfection that made me uneasy. Alex, I finally couldn't help asking one day, what exactly do you want? We were walking in Central Park. New York's autumn was beautiful, the leaves turning yellow. He stopped and turned to look at me. I want you. Sophia, did I want to be with you? Why? This question seemed to surprise him. What do you mean why? Why me? You could choose any woman. Why me specifically? He was silent for a long time, then said, because you don't need me. This answer confused me even more. I don't understand. Being with you, I don't need to play the savior, don't need to prove my worth, don't need to worry that you'll leave because of my flaws. You have your own life, your own career, your own goals. You choose to be with me because you want and not because you need to. I began to understand him. Alex and Marcus were completely different types of men. Marcus needed to be needed. Alex needed to be chosen. but I was still cautious. Alex, I need time to think that I don't want to make hasty decisions that I can wait. He said, I have all the time in the world. But fate didn't seem to want to give me much time to consider. November 2022. Marcus suddenly returned to my life. November 15th, 2022. I was working late in the office when I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, Sophia? This is Marcus. The moment I heard that voice, my heart stopped beating. Point 4 years without any contact. Why would he suddenly call me? Marcus. I tried to keep my voice calm. What's the matter? There was silence on the other end. Then his trembling voice, "My mom's in the hospital again. The cancer came back. The doctor says she might only have a few months left." My heart immediately softened. Whatever had happened between us, Marcus's mother had always been a kind woman. During my relationship with Marcus, she had always treated me warmly, never feeling awkward because of my family background. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. If there's anything I can help with, Sophia, he interrupted me. Can I see you? I have a lot to tell you. I hesitated. Seeing him meant reopening wounds that had already healed. But I still agreed. All right, tomorrow afternoon, the usual coffee shop. The next afternoon, I arrived early at the coffee shop we used to frequent in college. Marcus was 10 minutes late. When he appeared at the door, I almost didn't recognize him. 4 years had left obvious marks on him. He had lost a lot of weight. His eyes held fatigue and weariness, and the youthful awkwardness and insecurity were completely gone. Sophia, he sat across from me. Thank you for agreeing to see me. You don't look well, I said. How have you been lately? He smiled bitterly. To be honest, not great. Victoria and I broke up 2 years ago. I'm working as an engineer at a small company now. The salary isn't high, but it's stable. I'm sorry to hear that. And oh, you don't need to feel sorry about our breakup, he said. Actually, breaking up with Victoria was one of the best decisions I ever made. I waited for his explanation. It took me a long time to realize that I didn't choose her because of love, but because of insecurity. I felt I didn't deserve you, so I chose someone who seemed to need me more. But real love shouldn't be like that. His words made me uncomfortable. Marcus, why are you telling me this? Because I want to win you back, he said, his eyes shining with that focused look I hadn't seen in so long. These 4 years, I've been thinking about you constantly. I've realized that you're the one I truly love, the only one I love. I shook my head. Marcus, let the past be the past. We're both different people now, but my feelings haven't changed. He said, if given a chance to start over, I would love you the right way. Looking at him, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. This was a scene I had once dreamed of. Marcus realizing his mistake, coming back to me, admitting I was the one he truly loved. But hearing these words now, I didn't feel the happiness I had imagined. Marcus, I have my own life now, and you have a new boyfriend. He said that I know about Alex Blackwood. He's an excellent man, and I was surprised he knew about Alex's existence. Are you investigating me? Not investigating, he said that I've been keeping track of you. Seeing you doing well makes me happy. But I also know he's not the one who understands you best. This statement angered me. What makes you think you understand me best? 4 years ago, you chose to leave me, chose another woman. Now you come back and tell me you understand me best. Marcus's face went pale. Sophia, I know I hurt you, but please give me a chance to prove. Prove what? I stood up. Prove that you've matured now. Prove that you know what true love is now. Marcus, real love isn't a one-person show. It's not a game where you come and go as you please. I picked up my bag to leave, but he grabbed my hand. Sophia, please, my mom really wants to see you. She says she's always thought of you as her future daughter Lord. I am the final stage of her life. Could you let her be happy? This sentence hit the softest part of my heart. I knew he was emotionally manipulating me, but I couldn't refuse a dying elderly woman's wish. I can visit her, I said, but this doesn't mean there's any possibility between us. 2 days later, I went to the hospital to see Marcus's mother. She looked much older than I remembered, but her eyes were still gentle. Sophia, child, she held my hand. You're still so beautiful. We talked for a long time. She told me how much Marcus had missed me these years, how much he regretted his past choices. He's a good boy, she said, just too young and foolish back then. If you could forgive him. Looking at this dying elderly woman, my heart was filled with complex emotions. 3 months later, Marcus's mother passed away. At the funeral, Marcus held me and cried like a child. Before she died, she kept asking if we had gotten back together. He sobbed. I didn't know how to answer her. In that moment, my heart completely softened. Maybe it was because death made me realize life's brevity. Maybe because Marcus's sincerity touched me. Maybe because I had never truly let go of this relationship deep in my heart. Marcus, I said, maybe we can start over. The news of Marcus and me getting back together quickly reached Victoria's ears. January 2023. We held a small engagement ceremony at the Golden Gate Bridge. Only a few close friends and family attended, but I knew the news would spread quickly. At the time, I thought everything from the past was over, that Victoria was just a passerby in our lives who would never appear again. But I was wrong. Later I learned that on the very night of our engagement, Victoria was at a casino in Los Angeles, racking up the biggest debt of her life, $200,000. For someone whose acting career had failed and who could only survive as an agent's assistant, this was an astronomical figure. Even more deadly, this money was borrowed from loan sharks. Victoria had always had gambling problems, but none of us knew it in college. She was good at disguising herself, good at presenting a perfect image in front of people. But deep inside, she was someone who extremely lacked security and needed external stimulation to prove her worth. Gambling gave her that momentary peak experience, made her feel like she was controlling fate. But addictive things eventually turn around and control you. February 2023, the loan sharks found Victoria. You have 30 days to pay back the money, they said, or face the consequences. Victoria knew these people weren't joking. She had seen what happened to other debtors. Broken fingers were the lightest punishment. More serious consequences could affect family members. Victoria's parents still lived in a small town in Ohio, running a small restaurant, completely unaware of their daughter's real situation in Los Angeles. In desperation, Victoria thought of Marcus, not because of love, but because he was the only person she knew who might have money. She knew Marcus didn't have that much cash, but she also knew that if Marcus was willing to help her, the Chin family's wealth could completely solve this problem. The key was how to make Marcus willing to help her. Victoria devised a plan, a crazy, desperate plan. She would create an accident, an incident that would make her look innocent and pitiful, reactivate Marcus's protective instincts, make him feel he owed her, and thus be willing to help her. Fire was the best choice. Sudden, easy to create hero saves beauty scenarios, and hard to investigate the truth afterward. Victoria hired a thug, gave him $5,000, had him create a small fire at the Chin Tech building. Just create a little smoke, she said. Don't actually hurt anyone, but she underestimated the power of greed. The thug saw the luxurious decoration of the Chin Tech building and got bigger ideas. He thought $5,000 was too little. If he created a bigger fire, maybe he could steal some valuable items in the chaos. The fire he set was much larger than Victoria had requested. The afternoon of March 15th, Victoria came to the Chin Tech building according to plan. Using the excuse of discussing wedding arrangements, she asked me to meet her in the conference room on the 20th floor. To ensure the plan's success, she had sabotaged the fire alarm system on the 20th floor beforehand. Her idea was simple. After the fire started, she would act panicked and helpless. Marcus would rush up to save her, and in this process, she would show gratitude and dependence toward him, reigniting the emotional connection between them. Then she would confess her predicament to him and ask for his help. Given Marcus's personality, he definitely wouldn't refuse to help a woman he had once loved, but the plan completely spiraled out of control. When the real fire happened, Victoria realized what a huge mistake she had made. Thick smoke rolled, temperature rose sharply. She and I were truly trapped on the 20th floor. The panic she felt was something she couldn't fake. She thought this was just a small accident, but now she was facing a real life and death crisis. When Marcus appeared at the door, Victoria's survival instinct completely overwhelmed her plan. She was no longer acting. She was genuinely calling for help. But ironically, it was precisely this real panic and helplessness that made Marcus make that choice that changed everything. He chose to save her, not me. Victoria got the result she wanted, but the price she paid was much higher than she had anticipated, because in that moment of choice, she saw the disappointment and resolution in my eyes. She realized she might have won Marcus's sympathy, but she had forever lost my forgiveness. More importantly, she realized she had embarked on a path of no return. 3:30 p.m., March 15th. I received Victoria's call. Sophia, I want to talk to you about the wedding. Her voice sounded sincere. I know Marcus and you are back together. I want to congratulate you in person and clear up some past misunderstandings. I was surprised she would contact me proactively since Marcus and I got engaged. We hadn't seen each other. but I thought if she really wanted to reconcile, this might be a good opportunity. All right, where do you want to meet? How about the Chin Tech building? There's a quiet conference room on the 20th floor where we can talk properly, I agreed. Looking back now, I should have found it strange. Why would she suggest meeting at my company? Why the conference room on the 20th floor? But at the time, I didn't suspect anything. Point 3:45 when I arrived at the 20th floor conference room, Victoria was already there. She looked very nervous, holding a cup of coffee but not drinking it. Thank you for agreeing to see me, she said. We began chatting, mostly superficial pleasantries. She congratulated me and Marcus on getting back together. I responded politely, but I noticed she kept checking her watch, as if waiting for something. Point 3:47. Smoke began seeping through the door cracks. At first, I thought it was a problem with the air conditioning system, but soon I smelled burning. It's a fire. I stood up and walked toward the door. But the door handle was already hot, and the hallway outside was filled with thick smoke. I looked back at Victoria and found her sitting in her chair, pale-faced, trembling all over. Victoria, we have to find a way to get out of here, but she didn't respond, just kept repeating, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I thought she was delirious from fear. I tried to call the police, but found my phone had no signal. I tried to trigger the fire alarm in the conference room, but found the system wasn't responding. That's when I realized something was wrong. Why would the fire protection system on the 20th floor fail just when a fire broke out? But I didn't have time to think about these questions. The urgent matter was finding a way to escape. I covered my nose and mouth with wet tissues, searching for any possible escape route. The emergency stairwell was blocked by thick smoke. The main elevator was out of service. We were completely trapped. Victoria sat in the corner crying, her mascara completely smeared, looking like a desperate child. I went over and tried to comfort her. Victoria, listen to me, we'll be fine. The fire department will arrive soon. And oh, they won't. She cried. This is all my fault. This is all my fault. What's your fault? What are you talking about? But she didn't answer, just continued crying. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I asked, anyone there? Sophia, it was Marcus's voice. I had never been so happy to hear someone's voice. Marcus. We're here. The door was kicked open, and Marcus appeared at the entrance. His face was red from the smoke, his eyes full of panic. But when he saw both of us, I saw an expression in his eyes I'll never forget. Hesitation. Hesitation in a life and death moment. He had to choose between the two of us. Marcus, can you get both of us out at the same time? I asked. He shook his head. The smoke in the stairwell is too thick that I can only take one person down first, then come back. The silence in that moment was more terrifying than death. I looked at Victoria, who was gazing at Marcus with that desperate, expectant look. I suddenly understood everything. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. But why? Marcus walked toward Victoria and lifted her up. In that instant, I heard Victoria whisper something in his ear, but I couldn't make it out. Then Marcus turned to me, guilt in his eyes, but something more, a kind of relief. Sophia, you're stronger than her. You've always been stronger. You can hold on, and I'll be right back. I nodded. I even smiled at him, because in that moment, I suddenly understood all the truth. This wasn't a choice about love. This was an exposure of true nature. And Marcus's nature was like this. He would always choose the person who seemed to need more protection, not the person he should actually protect. He would always think I was stronger, so I should bear more. I watched him carry Victoria away into the smoke. My heart strangely calmed. I didn't cry, didn't despair, didn't get angry. I just sat there, waiting for the rescue I knew would never come, because I knew that whether Marcus came back or not, our relationship was already over. Not because of his choice, but because of his essence. 20 minutes later, the real hero appeared. Fire Captain Jake Rodriguez kicked down the door. He didn't hesitate, didn't choose. He directly rushed over and lifted me up. Ma'am, we're here to save you. In that moment, I finally understood what a real hero was. That a real hero doesn't consider whether someone deserves to be saved when rescuing them, doesn't calculate gains and losses in life and death moments. A real hero simply extends a helping hand without hesitation. 3 days after being rescued and hospitalized, Fire Captain Jake Rodriguez came to see me. He brought some shocking news. Miss Chun, this fire wasn't an accident, he said. We found evidence of arson at the scene that I sat in the hospital bed, trying to process this information. You mean someone deliberately set the fire? Yes, and even stranger, The fire alarm system on the 20th floor was sabotaged. The damage was amateurish, probably not done by a professional. Jake took out a folder containing scene photos and evidence. We found gasoline residue in the stairwell and cut alarm wires on the 20th floor. This was clearly premeditated criminal behavior. My heart began beating rapidly. If this was premeditated, then Victoria's suggestion to meet on the 20th floor wasn't a coincidence. Jake, who do you think could have done this? I can't speculate randomly, he said, but I suggest you recall if you've had conflicts with anyone recently, or if anyone might harbor resentment against you that I thought for a long time. Except for Victoria, I couldn't think of anyone who would have such malice toward me. But why would Victoria do this? She was also trapped in the fire scene. She also faced mortal danger. Unless this was a plan that got out of control. Jake, I think you might need to investigate Victoria Sterling. Over the next few months, Jake began a thorough investigation. Alex, learning about this, proactively offered help. He used Wall Street connections and resources to assist in investigating Victoria's financial situation and recent activities. The truth we discovered was darker than I had imagined. Victoria indeed owed enormous gambling debts, and her financial situation had completely collapsed. Bank records showed that the week before the fire, she had transferred $5,000 to someone named Tommy. This Tommy had a criminal record and specialized in shady business. More importantly, surveillance footage showed that Victoria had arrived at the Chintech building 2 hours early on the day of the fire, not at the normal time she claimed. She stayed on the 20th floor for a long time, long enough to sabotage the fire protection system. But the most powerful evidence came from Tommy himself. When police found him, he immediately confessed. That woman gave me $5,000 to set a small fire at Chintech, Tommy told the police. She said just create a little smoke, don't hurt anyone. But when I saw how luxurious that building was, I thought maybe I could steal some good stuff in the chaos. I set a bigger fire than she asked for. When Jake told me this evidence, I sat there for a long time without speaking. I tried to understand Victoria's motivation. Why would she create such a complex and dangerous plan? The answer was in her psychological evaluation report. After assessment by professional psychiatrists, Victoria was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. The characteristics of this illness include extremely unstable emotions, intense fear of abandonment, tendency to idealize or devalue others, and frequent impulsive behavior. In Victoria's psychological world, Marcus wasn't just an ex-boyfriend, but her savior. When she faced desperate circumstances, her brain told her that only Marcus could save her. But she also knew that under normal circumstances, Marcus wouldn't help her because he was already with me. She needed to create a situation that would make Marcus feel he owed her, reactivate his protective instincts. The fire was the core of this situation, and her plan. Marcus would heroically rescue her. She would show gratitude and dependence toward him. Then she would confess her predicament and ask for his help. But she hadn't anticipated that Marcus would really need to choose between her and me, and this choice exposed Marcus's innermost true thoughts. More ironically, Victoria got the result she wanted, but the price she paid was possibly facing imprisonment. In May, Victoria was formally charged with arson. Her lawyer tried to defend her, claiming she had mental illness and shouldn't bear full responsibility, but the prosecutor argued that mental illness couldn't excuse endangering others' lives. During the trial, I appeared in court as a victim to testify. Looking at Victoria sitting in the defendant's seat, complex emotions surged in my heart. Anger, disappointment, but also a trace of sympathy. She looked much older than I remembered, her eyes no longer holding the confidence and flamboyance of the past, only despair and regret. When the judge asked if I had anything to say to the defendant, I stood up and looked into Victoria's eyes. Victoria, I hope you understand that real love isn't obtained by hurting others. You could have chosen a different path, sought legitimate help, instead of using this dangerous method. I forgive you, but I hope you can learn from this mistake. After hearing this, tears welled up in Victoria's eyes. Sophia, I'm very sorry. She said that I never wanted to really hurt you, that I was just too desperate. In August, Victoria was convicted of arson and sentenced to 3 years, with the court also requiring her to receive psychiatric treatment. Marcus, having not participated in the arson plan, bore no legal responsibility, but Chintech fired him on moral grounds. When all the dust settled, I realized I needed to face not only Victoria's betrayal, but also the trauma within myself. This incident had reactivated the psychological shadow left by my mother's death in childhood, making me develop even deeper distrust of interpersonal relationships. I knew that if I didn't actively seek help, these traumas would accompany me for life. September 2023, I began receiving professional psychological treatment. Dr. Sarah Martinez was an experienced trauma psychology expert whom my father found for me. The first time I walked into her clinic, I was so nervous my palms were sweating. Admitting I needed psychological help was very difficult for me. Since childhood, I had been accustomed to bearing pain alone. Sophia, Dr. Martinez said, seeking help isn't a sign of weakness, but a manifestation of courage. People who can recognize they need help and actively seek it are truly strong. Her words made me relax a little. Over the next few months, we conducted in-depth treatment. Dr. Martinez used various therapeutic methods, including EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, to process my traumatic memories, and cognitive behavioral therapy to improve my social anxiety. The most difficult part was facing the night my mother died again. 8-year-old me sat in the hospital corridor, watching the doctor shake his head, listening to my father's cries. From that moment on, I told myself I couldn't depend on anyone because dependence meant possible loss, and loss meant pain. But Sophia, Dr. Martinez said, this defense mechanism protected you, but it also prevented you from building truly intimate relationships. You fear abandonment, so you choose to abandon others first. Her words made me suddenly understand. I suddenly realized that the relationship problems between Marcus and me weren't just caused by his weakness, but also partly my responsibility. I habitually maintained distance, rarely showing real emotional needs, which made him feel I didn't need his companionship and protection. When Victoria appeared, she gave Marcus a feeling of being needed, a feeling I had never given him. This realization was both painful and liberating. Painful because I realized I also had responsibility in this relationship. Liberating because I finally understood the root of the problem. But Dr. Martinez continued, this doesn't mean Marcus's choice was correct. Someone who truly loves you will love your strength and your vulnerability. They won't think you don't need care because you're independent, nor will they think you should bear more because you're strong. The treatment process was painful, but also liberating. I began learning to express my needs, to show vulnerability at appropriate times, to trust people worthy of trust. I also began re-examining my relationship with my father. David Chun was a good father, but his overprotection of me actually stemmed from his guilt over my mother's death. He felt he hadn't protected his wife, so he had to doubly protect his daughter. But this protection became a kind of constraint, making me more dependent on myself and more distrustful of others. Dr. Martinez's suggestion. My father and I had several deep conversations. Dad, I said, I know you want to protect me, but I need to experience some things myself, learn to grow myself. Mom's death wasn't your fault. You don't need to feel guilty about it for the rest of your life. Hearing this, David Chen's eyes filled with tears. Sophia, I just don't want to lose you too. You won't lose me, I said, but I need you to trust me. Trust that I have the ability to handle my own problems. In December, I gave an important report to Tech's board of directors about the company's development strategy for the next 3 years. This was the first time I truly independently took on such important responsibility, not because I was the boss's daughter, but because of my abilities. The report was unanimously approved by the board, and I was formally appointed as company vice president. In that moment, I felt unprecedented satisfaction. Not because I obtained a position, but because I proved my worth, proved I could achieve success independently. January 2024, I proactively contacted Alex. Since the fire incident, we had rarely been in touch. Not because he didn't care about me, but because he knew I needed time and space to process everything. Alex, I said on the phone, I want to see you. Of course, he said. Are you okay? I'm fine. Better than ever. I want to talk to you about our relationship. We met in Central Park, where we had many beautiful memories together. Alex, I want to apologize for everything before, I said. I didn't give our relationship a fair chance. I let past trauma affect our future. Sophia, you don't need to apologize, he said. Everyone has their own growth process. What matters is how you are now. I'm very clear about what I want now, I said. If you're willing, I hope we can start over. Not because I need you, but because I choose you. Alex smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. I've been waiting for you to say that for a long time. Spring 2024. The court's final verdict came down. Victoria was sentenced to 3 years in prison for arson and was required to receive psychiatric treatment. In court, I saw her again. Prison life had made her even more haggard, but her eyes seemed clearer than before. Before the judge read the verdict, Victoria requested to say a few words to me. Sophia. She stood up, her voice trembling but firm. I know no apology can make up for the harm I caused you. I'm not seeking forgiveness for myself. I just want you to know that these 3 years of treatment have taught me many things. I realize how selfish and dangerous my actions were, and I feel deeply ashamed. She paused, tears welling in her eyes. I also want to say to Marcus that real love isn't possession, isn't dependence, isn't obtained by hurting others. I hope you can find true happiness. Marcus sat in the gallery, lowering his head after hearing this. Finally, Victoria looked at me. Sophia, you're the strongest and kindest woman I've ever met. I hope you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for your own. Hatred consumes a person's soul, and you deserve all beautiful things. When the judge read the verdict, I felt a sense of relief. Not because Victoria was punished, but because this nightmare was finally over. As I left the courthouse, Marcus caught up with me. Sophia, he said, I want to talk to you. I stopped and looked at this man I had once loved deeply. Marcus, there's nothing left to talk about between us. Did I know? He said, I just want to apologize to you. Did I want to tell you that I understand now what a wrong choice I made? I looked at him calmly. Marcus, I accept your apology, but I hope you understand that the problem wasn't your choice, but the reason behind your choice. You always thought I was stronger, so I should bear more. But truly loving someone isn't calculated like that. He nodded, his eyes full of regret. I know I lost the best woman. Nobody lost anybody. I said, we just chose different paths. I hope you can find someone truly suitable for you, and I hope you can learn what real love is. That I turned and left without looking back. Not out of coldness, but because I knew some goodbyes are necessary, some endings are prerequisites for new beginnings. In May, Alex and I went to Europe for vacation. We visited the Louvre in Paris, made wishes at the Trevi Fountain in Rome, and tasted wine in Tuscan vineyards. This was the first time I truly relaxed and enjoyed life, not worrying about work or the future, just purely enjoying the present. You've changed, Alex said. Become more real. What do you mean? The old you was always perfect, always strong, but also had a sense of distance. The current you is still strong, but more real, more flesh and blood. That I understood what he meant. Psychological treatment had taught me how to find balance between strength and vulnerability, how to find harmony between independence and dependence. I was no longer afraid to show my imperfections, no longer felt that needing help was shameful. June 21, by the lake in Central Park, Alex proposed to me again. Not in a fancy restaurant, not in a luxury hotel, just on an ordinary afternoon, by the lake where we often walked. Sophia Chin. He knelt on one knee. Will you marry me? Not because we're well matched, not for business considerations, but because I love you, the real you. Looking at him, an unprecedented happiness surged in my heart. This happiness wasn't because of being proposed to, but because I knew that this time I was making a completely free choice. I do, I said. I'm willing to start our new life with you. As he put the ring on my finger, I saw a familiar figure across the lake. It was Marcus. He was watching us from afar, his eyes holding blessing and reluctance. I waved at him, and he waved back, then turned and left. In that moment, I knew we had both truly let go of the past. In August, we held our wedding in Napa Valley, California. There weren't many guests, just our closest family and friends. As my father walked me down the aisle, he said, Sophia, you've finally found true happiness. Yes, Dad, I said, I have, but I knew this happiness wasn't given to me by Alex, but by me to myself. I had learned to love myself, accept myself, so I could truly love others and be loved by others. At the wedding, I saw many people that my college classmates, my colleagues, my friends. But I didn't see Victoria and Marcus. Victoria was still serving her sentence in prison, and Marcus had moved to another city to start a new life. I hoped they could both find their own happiness. When the minister asked if I was willing to marry Alex, I said loudly, I do. These 2 words contained all my expectations and commitments for the future. Not dependence, not need, but choice. I chose love, chose trust, chose a future full of possibilities. That night, Alex and I walked on the beach. I said, I used to think strength meant bearing everything alone. Now I understand that real strength is knowing when to be independent and when to depend on others. What about now? He asked, you want to be independent or dependent? I smiled and held his hand tightly. Now, I want to face the future with you, whether it's joy or sorrow, success or failure. Not because I need you, but because I choose you. The waves lapped at the shore. Moonlight bathed us. I knew this was the life I wanted. Not a perfect ending from a fairy tale, but a real choice in reality. I chose love, and this time, I believe this choice will bring true happiness.